Hello students, welcome back to SuperKalam. So we are back with the next class of this initiative SuperStart with NCERT, and today we will cover two very important topics from class 11th NCERT Indian Constitution at Work, and we will also close this book, complete this book now. Now, before that, you should understand that the term local government and the concept of local government, it is a part of federalism itself. Now, in last class, we talked about federalism, right? So this concept of local government is a part of it. Why? Because federalism is the division, is a structure, is a framework where there are multiple hierarchies of government. There is central government, state government. Now, if you add one more hierarchy of the local government, then you are creating a three hierarchy based system of federalism. That's why you should understand it that it is a part of federalism. Second thing, why local governments are needed and what exactly are they, that we will understand throughout this chapter. For a basic understanding, local governments, so local governments are basically of two types in India. There can be different categorization, no hard and fast rule. One is rural local governments, other is urban local governments. Now, rural local governments in India are, they come under a broad concept of Panchayati Raj institutions. We call them as PRI, Panchayati Raj institutions. You must have already heard it, even if you are not living in a rural area. Then in urban areas, we have plethora, the diversity of urban local governments. We have municipal corporation. Municipal corporation, you must have heard of it. Like there is MCD, Municipal Corporation of Delhi. Similarly, for different cities, there are municipal corporations. For a smaller towns, smaller cities, there is municipality. Then there are Nagar Panchayats also for a further small cities. Is what local governments are. Now, why there is a need of local government? ये बनाया क्यों गया? Right, that's the next question. Now, this need you can understand from this page, the second page of this chapter. It very clearly says local government is government at village and district level. Local government is about closest to the people, the government which is close to people, which can help you in day-to-day life and problems. Now you can't go to state government or central government for any sanitation issue, or for any maybe some lights issue are there in the park, or the maintenance of park has to be done. You cannot go to CM and PM for this. So that's why these day-to-day problems for them, local governments become necessary, and it is also convenient for the people to approach. Now central and state government has lot of things to do already, lot of important things, so their accessibility, their reach, their time is constrained. But local governments, you can go to them for your these day-to-day issues. That's why it's convenient for the people as well. Also, it is also about participation of people. Now, see, in local government, very common people like your neighbor, or maybe someone from your own like locality, they become part of the government. They become part of local government. But central government and the state government, it may happen that the MLA MP is not from your locality. He may be from other locality in your constituency. But that doesn't happen in local government. That's why the person will be very much well aware of your issues. That's why there will be good accountability. He will be living with you. And he will also involve you because he knows you. The person knows you, is very local to you. That's why all these things, for very small local problems, this all for all these issues or all these things which I told you, a local government becomes necessary, right? It's also written common people are more familiar with their local government. That's why that closeness. Now, in a democracy, in a democratic government, there has to be people orientedness. Now, these local governments ensure that. So that's why they become important. Now, there has been a history of local government, the evolution of local governments in India. They have always existed in some form or the other. For example, you must be aware of sabhas. They were so earlier there were very small villages. The connectivity of villages was very big. So within the small village, there used to be this governance pattern in the form of sabhas and all, the self-governing village communities. So that was existing already. But during British time in 1882, Lord Ripon, you should remember his name. He basically further enhanced this concept of local government. He basically started urban local governments, their regular elections, selections, etc. although a lot of members were nominated in these local boards, but still there was some concept of local government which is started. Then in Government of India Act 1999, 1919 also, the village panchayats were established in a number of provinces. In Government of India Act 1935 also this was continued. And Mahatma Gandhi always wanted that the local, the panchayats, the local villages, the village-based government should be there. Why? Because they can understand people's issue in a much better manner. So he was always supportive of panchayats. So that was whole background which was there. Now after that, this decentralization, so these become so these panchayat, these local bodies which during British times also, which started functioning well, their scope got enhanced. What they did, they enhanced the decentralization, and they also enabled participatory government. Now, because Britishers were mostly controlling the center state angles, so these local issues were seen by our own people at that time in the form of participatory government, participatory democracy. And even when our constitution was made, at that time also, the concept of local government was a part of state list. Now, I told you yesterday, all those subjects which are under state list, now state government have power to legislate and on them and to oversee them. So this, as per our constitution, initially it was part of state list, and it was initially part of DPSPs also. Directive principles of state policy. There is one of the directive principle of state policy which says that promotion of panchayat by state. But there was no hard and fast rule, that there was no uniformity. All states, they had their own way of organizing panchayats, organizing urban local governments. So therefore, there was this difference. Now, later what happened? In 1992, there was a significant development which happened. There was a 73rd and 74th Amendment which constitutionalized the concept of local governments. Now, earlier they were part of state list. Now, in a very detailed fashion, in our constitution itself, these provisions were added. Structure was added, how they will be organized and all. This was in during 73rd and 74th Amendment. Before that, as I already told you, there were some community development programs which was happening. Central government was basically focusing on local development through this policy, this program. Some states like Gujarat, Maharashtra, they were also having their local bodies, although the powers of different local bodies from different states were different. The financial assistance which the states were given to these local bodies were different. Many states were even dissolving it. So there was no very organized, very institutionalized fashion of their organization. It was on the whims and fancies of the state. The powers of local governments are also on the whims and fancies of the state, as well as the elections. The timely elections was also on the whims and fancies of the state. So if timely elections are not held, the real power, the real scope of local governments cannot be organized. So all this was happening. That's when 73rd and 74th Amendment happened, and there was very wide provisions of local panchayats, local governments, urban as well as rural. It was made in that provision. Now, this 73rd and 74th Amendment has lot of provisions. Now, these provisions we should detail out now. These are important from their prelims perspective. First, we talk about 73rd Amendment. Now, 73rd Amendment talks about panchayats. 74th talks about municipalities. Now, 74th may there are a lot of provisions. For example, first is three-tier structure. Now, it creates a three-tier structure. Three-tier structure matlab there is this hierarchies at the head, at the top there is Zilla Parishad. I'll tell you here. So at the top there is Zilla Parishad. Then below that are blocks or Mandal Panchayats, Taluk Panchayat, different name in different states. Then there are village panchayats. So this is the three-tier structure which the constitution under the 73rd Amendment provided. Then there was also provision that there will be regular direct elections at all these three levels, direct elections. So common people will elect members of village panchayat, mandal panchayat, and as well as Zilla Panchayat. So these two provisions are clear to you. These were happened here. So as I told you, there was Gram Panchayat, Mandal Panchayat, Zilla Panchayat. And there was a concept of Gram Sabha also. Now, what was this concept of Gram Sabha? Now, all the members of village, of a particular village or a group of village who are above 18 years of age, or you can say all the eligible voters of an area, they were clubbed together, or they were combined, collected together under the concept of Gram Sabha. Now, a Gram Sabha of a village or a group of village will consist of all people above 18 years of age. Now, these will have very direct uh, role in the administration, and its role generally. So the 73rd Amendment says that the exact role of Gram Sabha, the states will decide, the state governments will decide, but its role has been in many states, for example, approval, audit, social audits of various government projects with various local projects. So these are very diverse function which has been given by to Gram Sabha by state legislature. Different state legislatures have given different functions. So this is the three-tier structure. I hope this is clear. There are three levels, all are directly elected, and there is a concept of Gram Sabha separately, in which all the above 18 years of age people are there. Now, second election, the second thing is there is a mandate of direct election. I already told you, and also election every 5 years. Now, earlier I told you there was whims and fancies of the state involved. Now, the amendment itself in the constitution itself, it's written that it has to happen in 5 years in regular period, and if any government, any local government falls, then within 6 months of its falling, of its dissolution, election should be held, right? Earlier before 73rd Amendment, even in few states there was a concept of indirect election also. So this is avoided now. Why? Because indirect election is not in line with local essence, the democratic essence. That's why. So these two provisions are clear. Third important provision is reservation. 1/3 of the positions in all panchayat institutions are reserved for women. Reservations for scheduled caste, scheduled tribes are also provided at all three levels, at the Zilla Panchayat level, Mandal Panchayats, and also the Gram Panchayats. So for women also, and for scheduled caste and scheduled tribe also. And states have been given this discretion that states can even provide for OBC reservation. Now these reservations are compulsory. OBC reservation is on the opinion on the, if states feel like, then they can give OBC reservation. Now this becomes important because there are few states like Mizoram, Meghalaya. These are prominently tribal regions. Now there is no sense of giving over OBC reservation there. In the same way, there are few states in which the population of scheduled tribes is very less, like OBCs is very less. So there it has to be very different, right? Now, read this point. This is very important. It is important to note that reservations apply not merely to ordinary members but also chairpersons. So all these three levels, the three tiers have a chairpersons also. So 1/3 of chairpersons of Gram Panchayats will be reserved. Let me explain this. So I told you there is Zilla, there is Mandal, and there is Gram Panchayat. Now there will be members of these three levels. Now reservation unke liye to hai. It's reservation for them. But there is a chairperson for all these three. There's a reservation for them also. 1/3 of the Zilla Panchayat chairpersons, women should be there. 1/3 of Mandal's chairperson should be women. In the same way, scheduled caste, scheduled tribe also. And from few states, even OBCs. That chairpersons are also, the seats for chairperson is also reserved. So that was the next point which I wanted to make. Now this structure is created. Reservation is given, three-tier structure is there, elections are held. Now some powers, some specific powers has to be given to them. Now the constitutional amendment 73rd, it gives that responsibility to states. It's upon the states to decide that what powers should be given to the Gram Panchayat, the local government in a particular state. But the 73rd Amendment has added a 11th schedule. In 11th schedule, I'll tell in the next page, there are a lot of subjects. Let me show you. See, there are a lot of subjects. For example, this is 11th schedule. There is a subject of agriculture, minor irrigation. You should read this. Sometimes question can be asked. Rural electrification, rural housing, cultural activities, libraries, health and sanitation also. Now, it is often like we believe that it is a part of a state list. But a state government can devolve its function of health and sanitation to the local governments. See, so these are the subjects which a particular state can devolve to panchayats, the rural local bodies, under Article 73rd Amendment. Sorry, under 73rd Amendment. Right. Now, in 1996, there was one more prominent thing. Now, this is very detailed mention in Lakshmikant, so you should refer that. Now, initially, to few tribal areas, few scheduled tribal areas, these provisions of rural local government were not extended. Why? Because tribal areas their culture is very different. Uh, in some tribal areas, there was already existing a local government type of system. In some tribal panchayats, like in northeastern area, it functions very differently. So government did not want at that time to interfere in their customs. But in later stages in 1996, it extended it to Adivasi areas also. And while extending, it ensured that the local customs, the existing customs are not harmed. The autonomy of these tribal areas is not harmed. The Gram Sabhas of these tribal areas were specifically given a lot of powers. Now, in these Gram Sabhas, they even approve compensation. They even have role in rehabilitation. If any developmental projects demand rehabilitation, then these Gram Sabha have a role in tribal areas. Even if some list of beneficiaries have to be decided, they have a role. So that's why more democratic powers, more localization, more decentralization to tribal areas was done in 1996, so that tribal areas customs is not being harmed. Then there is a dedicated state election commission which is made. State government appoints it. It is autonomous. One thing you should notice that this state election commission is not linked to election commission of India. It doesn't come under election commission of India. This you should remember. Election commission of India is different, whose powers and all have been given in Article 324 and all, which I already told you. State election commission has been made under Article 70, under 73rd and 74th amendment, and it is very different in nature. Then there is a concept of a state finance commission. Now there is central finance commission under Article 280. That is different. This state finance commission was made so that panchayats and local bodies have some finances also. If you are giving them power, there should be finances also in which through which they can exercise that power, that health and sanitation and all what we discussed, right? So therefore, this finance commission has to be constituted every 5 years by the governor of the state. And what it will do, it will decide on distribution of revenues between state and local governments. कितना revenue state को जाना चाहिए, कितना governments, local governments को जाना चाहिए, and within local governments, how much should go to rural, how much should go to urban. So that is decided by State Finance Commission. Now there is this 73rd amendment. I hope it's clear to you. Now there is 74th amendment. Now most of the provisions of 73rd amendment are applicable here also. For example, elections in 5 years. Concept of state election commission is also applicable here. The concept of state finance commission is applicable here. The concept of reservation is applicable here, right? So these all are applicable here also. The only difference is the 73rd amendment created a three-tier system, but 74th amendment creates different types of urban bodies. For example, I told you in the starting, it creates municipal corporation for big cities like Delhi, right? It creates municipalities for a bit smaller towns. Then township also it creates for township, which I told you, like Jamnagar township. It creates for a private industrial area. So the structure of local bodies is different here. The rest of the provisions with respect to elections and all are same. Now, what factors are taken into account while categorizing a particular area as urban? So the census of India defines an urban area. How? An area which should have minimum 5,000 population and 75% of the male members of that area, male working population of that area should be doing some non-agricultural work. And also the population density of that area should be at least 400 persons per square kilometer. So if these parameters are met, then the census of India, it categorizes that area as urban area. As per this concept, in 2011 census, around 31% of area of India was urban. Now I already told you the repetition of 73rd amendment is there. Like direct elections, reservation, transfer of subjects. So for panchayat, there was a 11th schedule which was created. For municipalities, there is a 12th schedule which has been created. Then rest, state election commission, state finance commission, 12th schedule I already told you, right? Now, this was a factual part of it, what it made. Now, we have to analyze. Now, this analysis, that how the functioning of local panchayats is actually happening on ground, it becomes important. As a future civil servant, you should know what problems are there and how can these be solved. So, implementation, right now, see the wide implementation. There are around, so this is old data in NCERT. Today, even more than this are actually there on the ground. 600 Zilla Panchayats, 6,000 block or intermediary Panchayats, and 2,40,000 Gram Panchayats. See the vibrancy. These many local governments are there. And 32 lakh members are elected for 5 years. And out of them, 13 lakh are women. Now, if you see, there are only 543 MPs, 245 Rajya Sabha MPs, 543 Lok Sabha MPs. And if you consider MLAs also, I think you will there will be around 5,000 total MPs and MLAs sab milakar. This on the one side and 32 lakh representatives on the other side. Now, obviously, in a so much populated country with 1.4 billion population, these 5,000 people cannot, take care of people because there is a time limitation. There is a resource limitation. That's why if you have more representatives, 32 lakh and 13 lakh women hai usme. There are Dalits also, scheduled tribes also. So that is a more like decentralization of democracy. The common man gets significant say in day-to-day problems. He can give feedback. He can ensure that accountability is there. That's the importance and implementation. You should always appreciate this part in your answers. Then I already told you about reservation for women. Women mayors are there. Women panchayat leaders are there. Some have even done so good work. Now there is an issue also. You should have seen this, the concept of pati, sarpanch pati, right? So women are elected because that is a reserved seat. So women are elected as sarpanch, the chairperson of village panchayat, but the husband takes the actual role there. So this is basically an issue which is there, and this patriarchy has a greater role to play here. It is declining nowadays. Now you can see women are very much active. They understand their role uh, in a local body, but still in some areas, especially in rural and backward areas, which are in hinterlands, still this issue can be seen. So this can you can always quote in the drawback. Now read this. Sometimes this what this see now local people have been given power, and there are Dalits also, there are scheduled tribes also, there are women also. These are the marginalized elements of society, marginalized people of a society. Now what happens if, suppose for example, a scheduled tribe or a scheduled caste, he or she is heading, and if he or she the person who is heading that panchayat is a Dalit and a woman also. So people generally have this tendency, because there is a social issue which is existing in our society, they are not taken seriously, and they are uh, because of social hierarchy involved, the stratification, social stratification involved in the society. So there can be tensions. There have been cases where people do not come to the meeting of a gram panchayat. Why? Because they feel that they they do not want to be headed by a woman, a Dalit woman sarpanch. So that do create a tension. So that social reality is there. You should always quote it. But it is also changing, because there is this Prevention of Atrocities Act. If you are undermining a person based on his caste and all, and discriminating against him, especially Dalit and scheduled tribe, you can be convicted. So because of these rules, still there is some type of coordination, but at the rural level still we see in village levels that there is some social discrimination which happens with even elected representative. Okay, then there is other problem also. I told you two problems already. One is the problem of sarpanch pati, second is the problem of social tension, and third is this problem. Many states have not transferred enough subjects of 11th or 12th schedule to panchayat. Now how they will function if they are not given power? In the same way, they have not been given even finance. Very little funds is there. And rural bodies, local bodies raise only 0.24% of their total revenues collected. That means a very meager, a very little amount they are able to raise it themselves. But 4% of expenditure made by government is done by them. So what does that mean? For almost all expenditure, they are dependent on the state. Now, if they are dependent on state or center for their expenditure, there will be delays in work. They will always have to take approval. They will not be able to maybe satisfy the local needs. Local people will say different, central government or state government will say different, but they have to work according to state government. Why? Because state government is giving them fund. So that discrepancy sometimes arises. So that is the last problem of funds issue. Now solutions are not given here, but I will cover solutions also. How these issues of local governance can be resolved. First is functions. They should be given more functions, more power. So Sarkariya Commission also recommended it, that more devolution of power should be there. The Schedule 11 and Schedule 12 subjects, and it talks about a principle of subsidiarity. Principle of subsidiarity says that whatsoever can be done at the local level should not be done at a state level. Whatsoever can be done at a state level shouldn't be done by central level. So maximum says maximum decentralization to local body should be there. So that is your one solution. Your second solution is finance. Now, state finance commissions are not very actively uh, formed, because of which this finance issue arises. So you can say that state finance commission timely should be formed. You can also say that corruption is also there at the local level. To address it, the concept of panchayat ombudsman can be there. There is already this concept in Kerala. This ombudsman will track and oversee all the financial transactions in a particular panchayat. Then third, there are three F's. Third is functionaries. Now there are the bureaucratic elements, the secretaries, etc., are not very much available. See, most of the this elected leaders in our local bodies, they are not well aware of the system, and it's when the functionaries, the bureaucrats, will have to play a role. They have to guide them, handhold them. So these are not available very actively. There is a deficiency of a cadre for local governments. Then fourth issue, you can say elections. Even today, the timely elections are not held. Bombay Municipal Corporation (BMC), its election has been delayed multiple times due to some reservation issue or multiple issues. That is a reality that happens. So that election delays the other issue. So you can cite these issues. This will holistically cover your answer, and you can always give suggestions like subsidiarity principle follow hona chahiye, state finance commission should be timely constituted, ombudsman principle should be there. In this way, your answer will be solution oriented and not problem oriented. So always give solutions to these questions on panchayat or urban local bodies, right? So this is your panchayat and urban local bodies. The local governments we have already done. I did make PPT, but I thought that I should start uh, in this way. We can do one question here, prelims PYQ. Let's do it. Indian polity, Panchayati Raj, local government, Panchayati Raj, and I'll also select urban local governments, urban local bodies. Right. Let's see how many questions are there. Okay, there are a lot of questions. Let's take first one also only. It was asked in 2020. Okay, this is very recent. Panchayats at the intermediate level exist in all states. Now, this you should know, they do not exist in all states because there are few small states. For example, state of Goa, Sikkim. They are very small. There will be no sense of making three-tier system. So, in some states, even two tiers can be there and intermediate level can be avoided. So panchayat at the intermediate level exists in all states? No, it doesn't. What does it ask? Which of the following given below are not correct? Okay, not correct it is asking. You should remember this also. Second is, to be eligible to be a member of panchayat at the intermediate level, a person should attain the age of 30 years. No, even for MLAs and MPs it's 25 years, so this isn't true. It's 21 years for panchayat members. So this is also false. The chief minister of a state constitutes a commission to review the financial position of panchayats at intermediate levels and to make recommendations regarding distribution of net proceeds between panchayats and state at intermediate level. Now there is a catch. The chief minister doesn't, the governor constitutes it. So that's why this is also wrong. All options are wrong here. That's why the answer will be B. You can practice more questions. I think there are 8 questions with respect to these topics which have been asked. Do practice. I'll give you MCQs. I will give you one mains question also. Do practice and get it attempted and see where you stand. Okay. So now we will look at the last chapter of this book. Chapter 10 is actually the last, with what we covered it with judiciary. Chapter 9 now is very much linked to the legislature part, but quickly we will do it. I have already given you some idea of this chapter earlier. Okay, so let's start. So constitution as a living document. Now it uses a term called living document. living. Now, you can derive the meaning of this by yourself. Living document means it never dies, right? Living, if something is living, it never dies. Now, how our constitution is living, how it never dies? How it never dies? By continuing being relevant. You can say that it remains relevant even today. That's how it's a living document. See, it has been more than 75 years now, but still you find the institution of Election Commission of India, the institution of President of India, all the CAG, the kind of electoral system we have, the panchayat elements will have, everything is relevant, everything is happening as it is. That's why we call it as a living document. So this is a basic essence of this chapter. We will cover various aspects to it. First few facts, you know that Constitution of India was adopted in on 26 November 1949 and it was implemented formally 26 January 1950. Constitution is a basic framework because many specific things it does not tell. For example, it tells that Election Commission of India will conduct election, but how will it conduct election? It did not tell. So that's why we have Representation of People's Act. In the same way, there are other provisions also. For example, it talked about Prime Minister, President, but exact working of cabinet it did not tell. So that's why we call it as a basic framework. It is a basic framework, and you will see that basic framework was so far sighted that it is relevant even today. See, making anything at that time and today in a technological era, in an era very different. Socially also India has evolved, economically also India has changed, internationally also India has changed. So this shows that that basic framework in the form of constitution which our constitutional makers made was very far sighted, it has solutions for future problems also, but at the same time the specific elements here and there has to be changeable. That's what when I told you about living document, it means that a document remains relevant, its concept, its framework remains relevant, and also it is amendable to the present needs. You know, our former Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru ji, he said that if you do not allow, if you make your a constitution of a nation rigid, then you curb the progress of that nation. That's why our constitution was made a bit flexible in order to allow it to be changed as per need. That's the essence of this chapter, right? The constitution has to be able to respond to the challenges that may arise in future. Obviously, we cannot make a very static, unchangeable constitution. That's why we have this concept of flexibility and rigidity. So our constitution allows some changes. That's why it's called flexible. At the same time, there are few elements like basic structure which shouldn't be changed. That's why it is rigid. So that's why it keeps a balance. Now this basic framework is the soul of the constitution. That's why it shouldn't be changed. And the other provision which are flexible, they should be changed because time demands their change. That's why it's a balance of both. Now, how this change happens? So there are three ways. Our constitution itself defines it. Article 368 mentions about two of them, two processes through which a constitution can be amended, can be changed. For example, let's see this: special majority in parliament in both houses separately. So if both houses with a special majority approves that constitutions one of the provision should be changed, it can be changed. There are some provisions which, besides this special majority, also need the approval of 50% of the states. So there are 28 states right now. So 50% of the states should also approve it. So there is this second way. Then there is third way also. It is not mentioned in Article 368. It is mentioned separately in other articles. Like for them, only simple majority will change the part of the constitution. Only like simply the ordinary bills, the way ordinary bills are passed, in the same way that these portions can be changed. We will cover these 3 points in detail now. First one is simple to ordinary law, simple majority in parliament say few elements can be changed. For example, creation of states. Now it appears that creation of a state should be done by significant majority. But Article 2 and Article 3 says this. Article 2 says Parliament by law admit new states, and Parliament by law can increase the area of a state, change the area of the state, divide a state. So it's saying that Parliament by law can say. First thing you note here is that it is not mentioned in Article 368. And second thing it is mentioned is Parliament by law. That means by ordinary process can do this. That's why this comes under the first category which I told you. This one, simple majority. So these changes can be done by simple majority. Now, Article 368 talks about two. I told you already. One is special majority. Now, what happens is special majority. Constitution requires two different kinds of special majority. In the first place, those voting in favor of amendment bill should constitute at least half of the total strength, and also two-thirds of those who actually take part in voting. Now, it becomes often difficult to students, but I'll explain through examples. For example, in the special majority, what happens is special majority in Article 368. For example, there are 543 members in Lok Sabha right now. 50% plus 1 is 272, right? But for amendment, what should be done is two things have to be kept in mind. Suppose at that time, at the time when voting was taking place on the amendment, there were only say 500, or there was suppose 200 members in the in the Lok Sabha. Now the constitution requires that two-thirds of these 200 members, two-thirds of these 200 members, that is around 133. At the same time, 50% of total members are 543. So 50% of that is 272. So ये दोनों मीट करने चाहिए. So ये दोनों conditions तब मीट होंगी when there will be 272 persons voting. But there are only 200 people in at that time in Lok Sabha. That's why no change can be done at that time. Right? Now, second case can be there are say 400 members, or for example, there are 500 members. 500 is a better example. Suppose there are 500 members. So what will be the two-thirds of 500? It will be around 333. And 50% we need is 272. So in this case, if out of 500, 333 members vote, it will be amended. So basic minimum 272 to chahiye hi. That you should know, because 50%. So that's what it says. The book says at least half of the total strength of that house, total strength 543 ka half. Second, two-thirds of those present and voting. ये दोनों conditions meet होने चाहिए, तब ये pass हो जाएगा. And there is no provision of joint session. Both houses, Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, separately pass this. So second is ratification by state. Now what is this? In ratification of states, the earlier provision of a special majority, for example, both houses passing through special majority, is applicable. That happens. Along with that, states, 50% of the states will pass it, will consent it through simple majority. That has to be done also. Right? For example, there is some change in Schedule 7. Schedule 7 is very much important from federalism perspective. Why? Because Schedule 7 talks about 3 lists. So in this, if some changes are being done, that means states' power are being changed. That's why here states' consent becomes necessary. So in such provisions, states' consent becomes necessary. Now, next question is why there has been so many of amendments. So I already told you, these amendments were done to basically ensure that our constitution is in line with the recent happenings. Now, see, we have recently the recent Nari Shakti Vandan Adhiniyam, which reserved seats for women. Now, it was needed because women's uh, representation in parliament and legislature is very less. That's why recent happenings go to consider to take them into account. It happens in the same way. 73rd and 74th amendment, which I already told you, it was needed by because without empowering local governments, you cannot change the local problems. You cannot solve the local problems. That's why the happenings, the demand, the need of that time demanded that those changes are done. That's why have been so many of changes. Now, the content, the element, the basically what these changes were actually have been divided, can be divided into few categories. First category is technical or administrative changes. बहुत छोटे से changes हुए. For example, by 15th amendment there was just a change in which the retirement age of high court judge was enhanced. It may happen that tomorrow or next year the retirement age of high court judges again increase from 62 to 65 years, maybe, because nowadays life expectancy is rising. So these are very technical changes. So many changes have been of this nature also. There has been similarly uh, increasing the duration of reservation in legislature has been such change, right? Second type of change is type of reserve this amendment came or become necessary. Why? Because there was different interpretation of judiciary and government. Judiciary said one thing, government said another thing. For example, in Keshavananda Bharti case, judiciary said that judiciary came with the concept of basic structure, and judiciary said that judiciary has a right to interpret the constitution and to review the constitution, and reviewing the constitution as per this judgment is a part of basic structure. But when government came with 42nd amendment, it said that in certain cases judicial review cannot be done. So these were differing interpretation. Government believed different thing, judiciary believed different thing. That's why 42nd amendment was brought. Then the third very beautiful aspect why these changes are done is because there is a political consensus that this should happen. For example, with respect to 73rd, 74th amendment, there was need realized by everyone that this should happen. Similarly, the age of voting was decreased from 21 years to 18 years in through 61st amendment. This also happened through political consensus without any differences. Then there have been some controversial amendments also, which I already told you. 42nd amendment is very controversial. First of all, it increased the age of Lok Sabha. It also puts restriction on the review powers of judiciary. Just now I told you. So therefore, this, even for small changes of technical nature, through a wide change, which all opposition as well as government realized with political maturity that this should be brought, as well as certain amendments have been done with a conflict also. So that these have been the causes in the past for amendment, and that's why there have been so many of amendments. And this basic structure doctrine, this also evolved because of this. Now parliament at that time was doing a lot of amendments. So in Keshavananda Bharti case, judiciary said that there are some elements of constitution which are part of basic structure and shouldn't be changed. So that's why through Keshavananda Bharti case, judiciary came with a basic structure doctrine, the soul of the constitution, which parliament cannot be changed. I also discussed this in judiciary chapter. So this is a limitation on amendment power. It is a limitation. It is a balance. It is a balance between rigidity and flexibility. You can say how it ensures that few elements do not change in the constitution, thus rigid, and everything other than basic structure can be changed and thus flexible. So this you can consider in that perspective. So at last, constitution as a living document summarizes all of our this discussion, which says that the document keeps responding to the situation and circumstances arising from time to time. There was a LPG reform which happened. Now our constitution says socialist. India should be socialist. So one would say that opening up your economy in LPG reforms is against socialism, but no, it is not. It is responding to the need. And also socialism meaning, the socialist meaning in our constitution is not very narrow. It is a Gandhian form of socialism. That's why it happened, because there was a need. That's why a constitution which protects democracy yet allows evolution of new practices become not only durable but also respected by citizens. If you make something rigid, for example, in various dictatorships, there has been a rigid constitution. Rigidly, you have done something. You are not changing it. There was a language discrepancy in Pakistan. They were not basically willing to uh, you know take Bengali also as a language. They would have amended the constitution, and if that amendment, that flexibility they would have shown. The similar thing is happening in Sri Lanka with respect to Tamil, this Tamil and Sinhalese concept. If you are showing flexibility, you are basically incorporating the aspirations of the people. You are walking along the aspirations of the people. That's why this constitution is a living document, basically captures that essence, right? So this is the end of the chapter. uh, the things the remaining things are basically the same, which you can go through. The contribution of judiciary, I told you already. The judiciary in Keshavananda Bharti case, it gave basic structure. Then political leadership, maturity of political leadership, I also told you there has been a lot of amendments which came out of political maturity. 73rd, 74th amendment, right? So that's where our chapter ends. Now, just to summarize, we started with constitution. We, along with constitution in the first class, we covered elections as well. Then we covered around rights. Every right in detail we discussed, and we also focused especially on Article 32. We talked about legislature and executive in a very integrated fashion. We saw how legislature basically checks executive. Then we talked about judiciary. And along with judiciary, we also talked about philosophy of the Indian Constitution. In philosophy, mostly preambles, elements, the values like fraternity, equality also were discussed. Then after this, we discussed federalism in very detail, very important from mains perspective. Thereafter, we talked about in today's class about local government. Again, from mains perspective, it becomes important because there have been repeated questions which have been asked. And then along with that, we did the living document. Constitution as a living document. So this is how your module, your this book on Indian Constitution at work ends. You should revise it. Watch these classes if you need again. Attempt MCQs, and this mains question attempt is more important because that's how you test your knowledge. And read them, revise them, and we will come back again with the next set of classes. So till then, happy learning. Thank you.